Got to check every time to make sure I have my key. I have that kind of a routine, I think. Every time I step out of a room, before I close the door, I stop, and you kind of do that pat down. Sort of like, okay, wallet, comb, phone, key, and of course these days, mask. I sort of stand here for a minute and sort of think, okay, what's back here? I have extra batteries for the GoPro. I've got the adapters, the cables. Have I got my book? Have I got my umbrella? I kind of do one of these. I check the weight, you know. It's like, oh yeah, I think I've got everything in there. I sort of stop. Okay, good to go. Now I can go. Today was supposed to be a haircut day. That was my plan for this morning. As you can see, I need that haircut. But I changed my mind at the last minute because I've been fiddling around with technology, and I decided that today is going to be a tech day. And as I think about tech, I'm going to head over to Chavi Coffee Shop and have myself a delicious cup of coffee, sit in air-conditioned comfort, and think about technology and play around with it. This technology day was prompted by something I talked about in my last video, which is that the Android app I've been using on my phone to edit videos, Power Director, it just stopped working. So yesterday I started looking for alternatives. So what happened with Power Director, I think, because I went online, I went to the Google Play Store, and I was looking at all the reviews that people leave for Power Director, and there were dozens of them, I think dozens, quite a few anyway, of reviews, very recent ones, where people said that the new update killed the app. They said they were using Power Director and it was working fine for a long, long time, and then there was an update, a new version, and suddenly it just broke for a lot of people. It just stopped working, and that's exactly what happened to me. Out of nowhere, Power Director just stopped working. It could not access any of the files anymore on my phone. Plus, every time I tried to add a text or insert music or insert anything, every time I tried to do anything, the program just froze, and I had to reboot and reinstall and redo everything. So I tried everything I could think of to get it to work, but couldn't do it. So I've given up on Power Director. But it turns out that Power Director crashing on me might end up being a good thing, because I went looking for an alternative, as I said, and I came across a program. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but I think it's called Kinemaster. And I installed Kinemaster on my phone. I started playing around with it. And as far as I can tell, Kinemaster suits me much more than Power Director did. So moving on to Kinemaster is actually a good thing. A funny thing is that long ago, when I first started looking into apps for my phone, I remember looking at Kinemaster. I looked at all the different apps available, and for whatever reason, I rejected Kinemaster and I chose to use Power Director. And I think I chose Power Director, though I don't really remember, but I think I chose it precisely because it was very simple and streamlined. It wasn't designed to do all kinds of fancy things. So you just basically took a bunch of clips, stuck them together, trimmed the beginning and the end of each clip, and you're pretty much done. And that's all I really wanted to do. But now, Power Director can't even do that. So I had to find something else and landed on Kinemaster. It's early days still, so it's way too early to know for sure whether I will end up keeping Kinemaster and using it, but my first impressions are really positive. The interface is really slick, really easy to use, and fancy at the same time. It's much more efficient than Power Director, and it seems to be much more powerful than Power Director as well. It can do a lot more things. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm heading to the Chavi coffee shop, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to take all the video clips that I shot yesterday, load them into Kinemaster on my phone, and just start using the program and learn about it as I go. So yeah, pretty excited about that technology day. The other side of my technology day is a little bit more complicated, and it's visual, so I'm not really quite sure how to talk about this. But I'm always looking for ways to mount the GoPro and to hold it and things like that. And just this morning, I came up with this new idea, something I'm testing out this morning, and I'll tell you about it in a second. The basic idea with the GoPro, or the basic issue, is that you want to do two things with it, or at least I do. Sometimes you want to be walking along and you're holding the GoPro ahead of you. And to do that, recently, I've been using this device, which is the GoPro 3-way, which is a very handy little unit because it can be 2 lengths long, you know, to hold it out in front of you like this, and it bends in any direction you want. Or it can be much longer at 3, and you can do all kinds of fancy things with it, holding it upside down and do whatever you want. But it also has a built-in tripod in the bottom. So you screw that in, and presto, you have a tripod. But there's a big problem with this tripod. It's too flimsy. The whole thing is just unbalanced. You put a GoPro up here, the legs are not big enough, and the whole thing just flops over all the time. So it's just not very useful. So that's one problem I was trying to solve. One way to get around the limitations of the GoPro 3-way and its flimsy tripod legs is using the GoPro Jaws, the big clamp, which I also have and really like it. Here it is here, and it's called Jaws, you know, for obvious reasons. It's got this great big heavy-duty clamp, and it has a bendable neck. So you can basically take these jaws and clamp them to anything around you, a table. In fact, all the shots that I've shot to this point were all accomplished using this, and I took this clamp and I attached it to fence posts, to garbage cans, to electrical poles, to a bicycle, to all kinds of objects along the street. And this is very handy for that reason, because you can essentially clamp it to anything and then bend the neck to aim the GoPro in whatever direction you want. So this is also very handy. And as amazing as this GoPro Jaws is and how much I love it, there's a big problem with this device as well. And if you think about it just for a second, it's probably pretty obvious. I can clamp it to anything you see around me just about, which is amazing. But what does it lack? It doesn't have a tripod mount. So right here, for example, this is too thick. I can't clamp this to anything here. All I have is a flat surface. And now this thing is completely useless because it doesn't have any legs. So I can clamp this, but then I can't put it on a flat surface. With the GoPro 3-way, I can use it as a tripod on a flat surface, but then I can't clamp it to anything. So the two of them, I need them combined. I need the features of one and the features of this one and put them together. And on top of that, GoPro, in their infinite wisdom, used 2 different mounting systems. The Jaws uses a quick release clamp, and the GoPro 3-way uses the regular finger mount, or whatever you call that thing. So they use 2 different mounting systems as well. And if you try to use one with the other, you end up buying an entire universe of adapters and screws and more adapters, and you pile adapter on adapter on adapter, and the whole thing just becomes a giant mess. So that was the issue that I've been facing. My original system was to take GoPro's quick mount system, the quick release system, and put it onto the GoPro 3-way as well. Therefore, if I want to quickly switch from the JAWS to the 3-way, I can just unclip it from one and using the quick release, clip it into the other one. After a lot of shopping in Kuala Lumpur, I ended up with all the gadgets and the doodads I needed in order to use the quick release system on both things. However, there were a couple of problems. I still had the original problem, which was that the GoPro 3-way, the tripod legs were too spindly and too unsteady. But more than that, in order to get the quick release system to work on the GoPro 3-way, I had to use so many different adapters. It was like an adapter on top of an adapter on top of another on top of another. It became so tall and so heavy and so unwieldy that when you held the GoPro out for vlogging, it was like really, really top heavy. And it just got pretty ridiculous because the whole advantage of the GoPro is that it is small and light. And by the time I was finished with all my adapters, the thing was like as big as a regular mirrorless camera. So there's no point using the GoPro. If you have to have so many adapters to use it, it becomes as heavy as a regular camera. You might as well just use a regular camera. Plus, I also started using a regular tripod. This is the tripod that I use with my regular camera. Much wider legs, much stiffer, much sturdier, and then I would end up carrying this around with me as well. So you can sort of see my problem. You buy a GoPro because it's so light and small, but by the time you fill your knapsack with all the things you need to use the GoPro, you're carrying around a whole photo studio all over again. Though, I do love this tripod. This is amazing. And trust me, when I talk about all the GoPro gadgets and adapters one needs, I'm not exaggerating. Every GoPro user has a secret drawer of shame, or in my case, I have my GoPro bag of shame, which contains all of the adapters you end up carrying around with you. And those are just the ones I have with me. There's a lot more in storage back in Malaysia. Now, I'm not saying that GoPros are a bad product, that I don't like them, or that all those adapters are not necessary. In fact, I love GoPros, and all of those adapters are really cool and have all kinds of uses. The thing is that a GoPro is first and foremost an action cam. So all those adapters and mounts are designed so that you can take this GoPro and stick it on your skateboard, on your Jeep, on your motorcycle, on your bicycle, on your skis, on your helmet, anywhere you want to stick a GoPro. That's what all that stuff is for. I always run into issues because I'm always trying to take a product meant for one thing and using it for something else entirely. And in this case, I'm taking an action cam, the GoPro, and using it for just walking around and talking. So that's, I mean, that's where the issue comes from. And so it's not the fault of the GoPro. I'm just trying to use an action cam as a vlogging camera. And then of course you're going to run into these issues and you try to adapt things, and that's where I run into my trouble. And that finally brings us all the way to the point I wanted to make. And yes, there was a point to all of this. The issue, as I said, is I'm trying to combine the features of this with the features of this to take this and somehow get it onto a tripod. This one has a tripod, but it has a different mounting system. You can see the mount here is different from the mount over here. And in order to solve this problem, I turned to all these adapters. You put this on here and you put that on there, and then you got to put this on top of that, and then you got to put this on top of, oops, going into the river, this on top of that, and then you need one of these. It's amazing to get from this mount to a quick release mount. You need all these adapters and it becomes a bit of a mess. But then this morning I had a brainstorm And I think it's kind of an interesting idea because it's kind of an example of lateral thinking. I got so focused on using all of this to accomplish my task, I did not see the obvious solution that has been in front of me this entire time. And there it is. There is a standard GoPro tripod, very small and flimsy, and I was trying to use all of this to attach this, but I completely forgot that the whole advantage to this thing is that it has a giant clamp that can clamp onto anything. This does not need any adapters. So check this out. Here's my jaws. It won't stay up because it has no tripod base. Here's the tripod base. I just take the clamp and clamp it onto the tripod. And is that not the most amazing thing you've ever seen? No adapters, no screwing in, no attaching, no complex series of adapters. I can use it as a clamp, and if I ever want to mount it on a flat surface, like in a restaurant, all I do is clamp it to the tripod. And there you have it. I've combined a tripod with the clamp by using the clamp's main strength, which of course is, it's a clamp. There you go. And then you can bend this any way you want. So that was the point I've been trying to make this whole time. This was my big revelation this morning. I was trying to figure out a way to start using this GoPro jaws again, and then it finally occurred to me, I can just clamp the jaws to a tripod. And that's what I'm going to use for a while and see how that works out. There might be some unanticipated problems, but I don't know. It just seems like a brilliant and a simple solution. So, GoPro, call me if you need me in your laboratories. I've got some ideas for you. Whew. My idea right now is to get out of this heat or get a haircut, one or the other. But yeah, I was on my way to a coffee shop. I'm going to continue there. And once I get there, I'll order an iced coffee. I'll sit down and go from there. See you in a few minutes. I finally made it out of the hot sun and I'm inside a Chavi cafe. Just ordered an iced cappuccino. It's nice to be inside the air conditioning. And there it is, my iced cappuccino. And using my new invention, I can now take this little GoPro tripod, clamp the GoPro jaws to this tripod, and then just set it down on the table. And I can do it within 2 seconds, and I don't have to do any unclamping or use any adapters of any kind. Very exciting. And there you have it, my GoPro sitting nicely on its little tripod. I'm very pleased with myself this morning, as you can tell. So I'm going to reward myself with a iced cappuccino. Nice. Yeah, that's really good. So what I'm going to do now is break out my phone, which is my current editing platform. As I mentioned earlier, my other big change in technology is switching over to a new Android video editing app, something called Kinemaster. I used to use PowerDirector, and I'm finding Kinemaster to be a big improvement, I think. I'm enjoying it quite a bit, but that's what the interface looks like for Kinemaster. I've got one of my videos up there from yesterday. It's a very intuitive interface, and it's still early. I'm not that familiar with the program yet, but it seems to have a lot more features even than PowerDirector. And The one thing I'm still waiting to find out is whether video in Kinemaster also has a lag in the audio, because the audio and video are out of sync on a Power Director. We'll see if Kinemaster fixes that problem as well. Anyway, I'm going to settle in, enjoy my coffee, and try to figure out how to use Kinemaster. Just leaving from Chavi Cafe. Once more, really enjoyed my time there. Such a great place. Glad I discovered it. As I was leaving, they gave me a little card for Chavi Cafe. Apparently, if I have 10 cups of coffee there, then I get one free. So now I can get my card stamped every time I go there. Actually, I just asked them for a name card so that I could give the name card to my landlady. She seemed interested to find out where this coffee shop was. So I asked them for a name card, but they didn't have a name card, but they gave me the stamp card so I can get a free coffee after I order 10. So that's great. And all of my technology adventures are pretty successful. Still pretty happy with my idea for using the GoPro jaws to clamp it onto a tripod. So that kind of combines the best of all worlds. It's not a perfect system. One advantage to the GoPro 3-way, a big advantage, is that it is longer. So it's a lot easier to hold the camera away from yourself. It's a more natural grip. The jaws is quite a bit shorter and more squatty, so kind of have to hold your arm up higher, and so it's not quite perfect, but it's certainly a nice option. And I also enjoyed my first attempt at using Kinemaster, the new editing app. There's a lot of features in it that I don't know how to use yet. I'll have to spend some time going over some tutorials and some of the guides and manuals to figure out how to use it. But it seems to be more suitable to what I need to do than Power Director at this time. All right, enough babbling. Heading back to my guest house to relax a bit, get out of this hot sun, play around a bit more with Kinemaster. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.